Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this amazing video of ServiceNow CMDB interview questions. So now let's start with the very first question. As a 1 to 3 year CMDB developer, how do you explain the purpose of CMDB in a particular project? So ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about CMDB in a real project, we usually explain it in a very simple language. We say that the CMDB is like a central map, the entire IT environment of a particular company. It does not only store servers and application, it is also storing how all these systems are connected and dependent on each other. Because this dependency become extremely useful during incident and changes. For example, when an incident happens, we can quickly identify which configuration item and business services are impacted here. And during a change, we use CMDB for impact analysis. So we can understand what might break before implementing a change. Okay, so this is the main thing here. One more important thing interviewers look for 1 to 3 years of experienced people is whether we understand that CMDB is not just a technical table. It is a live operational model that support IT processes. So keep these points in mind before answering. Let's discuss the second question. How do you explain configuration item with a clear and practical example? Okay, this is also one of the good question and people ask this question generally. So when explaining a CI, we should avoid giving only the textbook definitions. Okay, keep this in mind. A better way is to say that CI is anything we track because it is important for delivering or supporting IT services. This mention is very important, IT service. Then we go to the types, like it can be a physical component like server or laptop, or a logical component like application, database, or a business service. Then we should explain with practical example. Okay, this is also important. So for instance, we had a payment application CI connected to 2 Linux CIs and 1 database CI. So whenever there was an issue with the payment service, we could immediately identify which underlying server or database was involved in that, which is the faulty component. We can easily track that, right? So this kind of explanation sounds practical as well as it's real project understanding instead of just throwing the pure theory to the interviewer. So keep that in mind. Let's move to the next question. How do you describe the main ways data actually enters into CMDB? Very important, very good question. So in real projects, CMDB data comes from n number of multiple sources. The first and foremost, most common source is discovery and service mapping. So these services automatically discover servers, network devices, applications, and database, okay, and create and update the CIs on regular basis. So first is okay. Second important source is import set and integrations. You have seen various integrations in your CMDB, such from the tools like SCCM, cloud platforms, monitoring tools, or external inventory systems also push the data to CMDB or ServiceNow. Now come to the third source, which is manual entry. This is usually done for logic services or business level information that cannot be discovered automatically. Yes, business service. All these are what? These are the business or service level things. These are not available anywhere in the environment or the networks. That's why we have to create these manually. Okay, most of the time, or you can say 99 to 100% of time. Along with that, it may be possible that data can also enter through APIs where external systems directly communicate with ServiceNow. So as ServiceNow CMDB developer, our responsibility is not only loading the data, but also ensure that the data remains clean and does not create duplicate or inconsistent records. Okay, so all these things you have to share whenever such question is asked. Let's move to the next question. That is question number 4. How do you explain CMDB health in a way that makes sense to everyone? So a very simple way to explain CMDB health is this, that CMDB health tells us whether the CMDB is actually reliable and useful. Okay. It mainly focuses on 3 things. The first one is completeness. That is, it is checking whether the important fields such as name, owner, support group, environment are filled up properly or not. This is completeness. The second criteria is correctness. In this, we validate whether the stored information is making sense or not. For example, whether the IP address, operating system version, or the CI classification is valid or not. Okay. So then we come to the third one, which is compliance. This checks whether the CI is following organizational standards or not, such as correct relationship, proper classes, naming convention, and many other things. Okay. So in ServiceNow, we monitor CMDB health dashboards regularly and continuously to improve the poor quality records. There is a complete CMDB health dashboard which is available. You can refer to that. Okay, so this demonstrates that we focus not only on creating records, but also we are maintaining long-term data quality. And again, this is very, very important, and it helps in taking decisions going forward by the organization. Now move to the next question. That is question number 5. How do you explain IRE rules when different sources fight over the same CI? So first of all, you understand what is IRE rules. Okay. This is one of the most important concept in CMDB. So, in real environments, multiple systems try to update the same fields or same CIs. It is very common, right? For example, discovery, SCCM, cloud integration, and monitoring tools may all send the updates regularly onto your CMDB. So in this case, if there is no rule, it is possible that duplicate records or conflicting updates can happen, right? So in that case, this is where IRE comes into the picture. First of all, identification rule helps ServiceNow reorganize whether an incoming record already exists or not. Okay. It is doing that with respect to various fields like serial number, host name, or unique IDs. Okay. So this is it. And we have the reconciliation rules that decide whether the data source is trusted for a specific field or not. So if you want IP address and operating system to be updated only via discovery, you can set that priority top. Okay. That ServiceNow discovery has the top priority here. And I accept for these fields only updates from these particular discovery source, that is ServiceNow discovery. So all these options are available. So that is what you have to explain, that these rules help in maintain clean, reliable, and consistent CMDB data. Okay. So now let's move to the sixth question. How do you connect your CMDB work with ServiceNow discovery as 1 to 3 year developer? Okay. So I told you already, discovery is one of the source, right? So discovery act as like an automation engine for CMDB. It automatically scans infrastructure and update the technical CIs such as server, database, storage device, and the network component within the CMDB, okay, on regular basis. So as a CMDB developer, we usually work with mid servers, various credentials, schedules, IP ranges to ensure that the discovery is running smoothly and successfully. As a developer, we also have to validate whether the discovered devices are getting created in the correct CI or not. So at any time, if we see some issues are occurring, we may troubleshoot the credentials, we may troubleshoot the discovery pattern or IRE rules. These are the few debugging areas where most of the issues are happening. So we must have a clear understanding of all these things. We must know the complete end-to-end details of these things. Okay. So we can say that discovery is not only running the scans, it is about maintaining accurate and continuously updated infrastructure data inside our CMDB. So let's move to the next question. How do you explain CI relationships with a simple real life scenario? Yes, people generally ask real-time things. First of all, you have to tell the importance. Relationships are one of the most crucial part of CMDB. They help us understand how services and infrastructure components are connected to each other and dependent on each other. Okay. So then example. So for example, a business service may depend on an application that application may depend on multiple servers and databases. So we have the dependency map here. So if one of the server goes down, we can quickly identify which applications and business services are going to be impacted. Okay, so relationships are heavily used during the incident management, change management, and impact analysis. This is what you have to tell the interviewers. It will give you definitely good marks. These relationships can be created through discovery, service mapping, integration, or manually as well, but mostly it is automatic via discovery. Okay, so these are some key points which you have to share during the interview. Let's move to the 8 questions. How do you clearly explain the difference between an asset and CI? Very old question, but yet people are asking these questions many times. So you have to be very much clear in this. So the easiest way to explain this is an asset is mainly focusing on financial and life cycle tracking, whereas a CI is mainly focused on technical and operational. Okay. For example, a laptop may have an asset record as well as the same laptop has a CI record. So asset record stores information such as cost, vendor, purchase date, warranty, okay, etc. Whereas the CI record that store technical details such as relationship, assigned user, connected services, and various other. Okay. So in ServiceNow, asset and CIs are linked together, but they support different business processes. Okay. Asset management focus on ownership, cost, and life cycle, where CMDB focus on dependency, relationship, and operational impact. Okay. So now finally move to the second last question. Question number 9. How do you explain safe bulk loading of data into CMDB? Good question. So when discussing the bulk loading, we should explain first of all the risk that if we load data directly in CMDB without any validation, we can accidentally create thousands of duplicate and incorrect CIs. Okay. So the recommended process is always a controlled and a staged one. First of all, the data loaded into the staging table using import sets. Then after that, we validate the mandatory fields, format, naming standard, and duplicate possibilities. After proper validation and remediation of that validation, we create transform map to move data into the correct CMDB classes. Okay. In ServiceNow, it is also possible that we test that import with a smaller sample. Along with that, we also share that in some cases, scripts are used in transform maps where we can normalize or clean the incoming data well. Okay, so this approach ensures safe and high quality bulk uploading in CMDB of ServiceNow. Finally, the last question. How do you talk about common CMDB mistakes and how do you avoid them? Okay, so this is also a common, but for your implementation practices also, this is important. Here, one of the most common mistake is treating CMDB like a dumping ground. Organizations sometimes load every discovered items without defining business value and scope into the CMDB. Okay, this is the mistake number 1. Another common mistake is ignoring CMDB health. I told you how important that is, right? So just because CMDB contains many records, it does not mean that the data in CMDB is reliable and trustworthy. You have to maintain its health and check it properly, right? Many CIs may be incomplete, duplicate, outdated, or unrelated. Okay. So to avoid that, we first define a clear scope and understand what should actually exist in CMDB. Okay. Then we establish health checks, monitor dashboards, improve relationships, and continuously clean the poor quality data. Finally, we also need to avoid unnecessary over customizations unless there is a strong business requirement for that. Okay, so these particular steps which I discussed are demonstrating a mature and a process-oriented CMDB approach. And that is what you have to share with the interviewer to get the good marks. Thank you so much. Subscribe and share. Let me know on which you want next.